My name is Amanda Thomas. Thank you so much for coming back. If you're a returning subscriber, if you're new here, welcome. We're super excited to have you here. I'm really sorry I missed last week's upload. My job got really hectic, so I was unable to make a video, but I'm here this week and I will be here next week. I decided to go ahead and pre-record for the next week so that if I ever run into this time crunch thing again, I will still have a video to upload. So really sorry about that, but I will be here next week. And so yeah, thanks for joining me again today. If you are new here, you can go ahead and hit the little subscribe button down below and the little bell icon if you're interested. That way you can be notified when I upload. If you don't want to do that, that's just fine, completely understand. I do want to give a warning though that the things we discuss here can get a little heavy sometimes, so if that's something that your mental health cannot handle, just go ahead and click off this video. I will catch you somewhere else, but your mental health is so much more important than any YouTube video ever will be. Today we're going to be discussing Maddie Clifton. Maddie was an 8-year-old girl living in Jacksonville, Florida with her family. She was extremely gifted in music. She loved to play the piano, and she was also very tomboyish. She liked to play basketball. That was her favorite thing to do. And anyone who knew her said that she could go from ballerina to rough and tough football player in a matter of time. So she was the perfect mixture of tomboy and girly girl, and she was just sweet and kind and so loved by her family. Maddie loved to play outside. That was her favorite thing to do, and the recent thing that her and her neighbor friends had figured out to do was to get golf balls and hit them into the woods or the area back behind their house, and that was how they were spending the majority of their time. If they would run out of golf balls, Maddie would run back inside, grab another handful, and go straight back outside. And November 3rd of 1998 was no different. Maddie came home from school and did her usual practicing her piano for an hour after school, but after she was done with that, it was still daylight outside, and so she decided to go outside and play before the sun went down. Maddie's mother was okay with this. She said, just go outside and play, just make sure that you're back in time for dinner. So Maddie did just that. She was outside playing, and she was going to the local neighbors' houses, seeing if any of the kids were available to play with her, and it didn't seem like anyone was available that particular evening. But Maddie stayed busy outside. And about 6:20, Maddie's mother, Sheila, had made dinner. It was ready. They were ready to eat, and she was expecting Maddie to come in at any second, and they were going to have dinner and go about their usual evening. But Maddie did not come inside. Sheila eventually walked outside to see if she could get Maddie to come inside, and she couldn't find her anywhere. It didn't take her long to realize that something was very wrong, and so she called police by 6:33 that afternoon. The search for Maddie began immediately. Police came out and started searching, and they really couldn't find anything. Maddie still didn't come home, and so this wasn't just a case of her going to a neighbor's house and just losing track of time and, playing. Something was really wrong here. During the following days, a search began with police, and over 400 volunteers came to help. Police quickly narrowed down on a suspect named Larry Grisham. Larry had been accused of SA 15 to 20 years prior to this, and it was because of this that he became a suspect in Maddie's disappearance very quickly. The charges against Larry had been dropped, and he was never convicted of anything like this, but it still raised alarm bells for investigators that were searching for Maddie, and so they decided to give Larry a polygraph test. This is a test that he failed, but we also know how unreliable polygraph tests are. And so when Larry gave an alibi that was pretty rock solid, investigators decided to move on to somebody else, figuring that Larry was not involved in Maddie's disappearance at all. There were so many volunteers still searching for Maddie. Eventually, police would call off the search, but the volunteers continued. They still were out looking for Maddie, trying to find anything that they could when it came to Maddie's disappearance. A part of that volunteer group was a 14-year-old boy named Joshua Phillips. Joshua and his family had just moved into town about 18 months prior to this. They moved around quite a lot. His father was a computer programmer, and so his job required him to move around quite a bit. It is also said that Joshua's father was a violent man. He had a drinking problem and some anger issues, and he would often lash out at Joshua and his mother. The family also wasn't very social. They didn't like spending time with neighbors or anything like that, and this is believed to be because Joshua's father was violent and that he did have a drinking problem, that they were a little bit more secluded than your typical neighbor would be. Joshua and his mother would often try to keep a low profile in the home. They didn't want to set off his father for anything crazy, or they were kind of always walking on eggshells. No matter what they did, it seemed like anything would really set off Joshua's father, so they really tried to keep a low profile and did try not to make him angry. And I find that really, really sad, but that was the life that they lived. They were always walking on eggshells, and that's just how things were. It is important to note, though, that Joshua had been banned from spending any time with Maddie and Maddie's older sister named Jessica. A month before Maddie's disappearance, the Clifton family had come home to find Joshua in Jessica's room. This really scared the family, as I think it would anybody, and so the family just decided that Maddie and Jessica should not be spending any time with Joshua. There was also something said about Joshua making inappropriate jokes towards the girls, and so the family just decided that Joshua was not someone that Maddie or Jessica should be hanging out with, and so they were banned from seeing Joshua completely. But the night that Maddie had gone missing, a neighbor saw Joshua creeping up on Maddie. But when Joshua was asked about this, he said that he had not seen Maddie that night, that he had not been around her, and this really contradicted what the neighbor had seen. The neighbor had seen Joshua creeping up on Maddie, like he was trying to scare her or something, and the neighbor didn't think anything of this, thinking this was just like child's play, like the kids were playing and he was just trying to scare Maddie. I don't think anyone would think anything different when it came to this quiet community where the kids often played together. But Joshua was adamant that he had not seen Maddie that day when he spoke to police. Nobody could find Maddie, and time went on and the search continued. Volunteers continued to search for Maddie. They handed out flyers, and America's Most Wanted even offered to air Maddie's case on their show. There was also a $50,000 reward offered, and still no tips came in. Nobody knew where Maddie had gone. The search continued until November 10th. On November 10th of 1998, Joshua's mother was cleaning house, and she was specifically looking at Joshua's room. While she was doing this, Maddie's parents were on national television pleading for Maddie's safe return. Now, like I said, there had been a weird smell coming from Joshua's room, and Joshua had been trying to cover it up with incense and stuff like that. And so Joshua's mother decided that she was going to clean his room and discover what the smell was while he was at school. Joshua had a water bed, and so when she walked into his room, she saw what she thought was a leak from the water bed. So she pulled off a piece of plywood at the end of the bed, and that's when she discovered two small feet sticking out of Joshua's bed, out from under Joshua's bed. She had found Maddie. Maddie was dead, and she was shoved under Joshua's bed in the fetal position. Joshua's mother ran out of the room, ran out of the house, and she went and reported to police what she had just found. Police had searched the Phillips house during their initial search when they first started searching for Maddie. They were going around to different neighbors, searching their houses, and they had searched the Phillips house, and they had noticed a strange smell coming from Joshua's room. But Joshua's mother had said that it always smells weird there, so they just kind of left it alone and didn't search any further. Joshua's room was immediately taped off as a crime scene, and Joshua was picked up from school. They brought him to the police department for interrogation, and it didn't take long for Joshua to confess. He told police that he and Maddie had been playing baseball when he had accidentally hit Maddie in the eye with a baseball. He said that Maddie had started screaming, crying, and he was afraid that he was going to get in trouble by his father because he wasn't supposed to be hanging out with Maddie, and he had just hurt her, so he was afraid, so he took her up to his room and hit her in the head with a baseball bat twice to make her stop crying. This hadn't killed Maddie, and that's right when his dad came home, and he went downstairs to speak to his father, and he acted like everything was normal. He then said that he went back upstairs with a knife pen and stabbed Maddie in the throat to finish the job. He then shoved her under his bed to hide the evidence, and he slept on top of Maddie's body for 7 days while the search for her went on outside. Joshua was arrested for Maddie's murder, and on November 16th, prosecutors announced that they were going to try Joshua as an adult. Now remember, he was only 14 years old at the time. They asked the grand jury to indict him on first-degree murder charges, but they refused to go for the death penalty because of Joshua's young age, and he was also denied bail. He was forced to stay in jail while he awaited his trial and sentencing. Maddie's autopsy was made public in January of 1999, and it made the case all the more shocking. While there was no evidence of SA, Maddie's pants and her underwear had been taken off and shoved under the bed first. So first he shoved her clothes under the bed, and then he shoved Maddie's body under the bed. And that just seems extremely strange to me. He did say that her pants had came off of her while he dragged her around his room and had pushed her under the bed, but it doesn't make sense to me that that would have happened, that they would have came off naturally and been shoved under the bed first, if you catch what I'm trying to say here. The trial was moved to a different county because of the media that was surrounding the case, and to give Joshua a more fair trial, they moved it to a different county. But when trial began, it just became all the more shocking. Prosecutors presented evidence saying that Joshua had been watching some adult videos 30 minutes before murdering Maddie. These adult videos were extremely graphic, and they involved young children, much younger than him. I get that Joshua was still a child himself, but these videos involved children that were much younger than him. There was also no evidence that Maddie had been hit in the eye with a baseball, meaning that his story that he had accidentally hit Maddie was probably false, that he had probably sought out Maddie. Maddie also knew that she was not allowed to hang out with Joshua, and this probably meant that she had not been voluntarily been hanging out with Joshua. With all of the evidence combined, Joshua was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. You would think that this is where the story ends, but it's not. In 2012, the Supreme Court of the United States heard the trial of Miller versus Alabama, and in their decision in this trial, they decided that sentencing juveniles to life in prison without parole was unconstitutional. So because of this, Joshua was given a new sentencing hearing, and this was to be held in November of 2017. Maddie's mother was able to make a statement to the court during this resentencing hearing, and she pled with the courts to uphold the sentence. But Joshua was able to speak as well. He talked about how he had been rehabilitated and that he would make different choices now that he was an older and that he was an adult. He said he had been a model prisoner and hadn't really gotten in trouble for much of anything, and anything he had gotten in trouble for were minor things. He talked about wanting a second chance at life and being able to kind of redeem himself and not make the same choices that he had originally made. Joshua's sentence was upheld, and he is still sentenced to life in prison, but he does have an opportunity in 2023 to revisit that. So he might be getting out as early as 2023. So this really begs the question, do you think that he should be spending his life in prison? Do you think that since he was only 14 years old when he committed this crime, that he would be a different person now as an adult? Or do you think that he'd make the same decisions and you cannot be rehabilitated for making a decision like this? He took someone's life, and so I really wonder what was going on in his head. Was it his father's violent nature that led him to this, or is there just something inside of him that wanted to kill people? Sometimes I lean towards, I think he needs to be given a second chance because he was a child at the time and people do change. But then I think about the gruesome and violent nature of this crime, and so I'm kind of like, no, I don't think you can rehabilitate from that, and I think he needs to spend the rest of his life in prison. I'd love to know your thoughts on this, though. What do you think? If you want to, go ahead and leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, if you want to, you can hit the little subscribe button down below and the little bell icon so you can be notified when I upload. But thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I so appreciate you being here. I am sending so much love to you today, and I hope this finds you well. So, thank you again.